Hello YouTube, it's good to see you guys. Today I'm going to show you guys how to field strip, lubricate, and reassemble a CZ style pistol. This pistol is a Tanfoglio Witness pistol. It's very similar to all the CZ pistols. It is in fact a copy. So here we go. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how you take down the CZ Witness pistol. This is a copy of the CZ style pistols. It's like a CZ75 more or less. So this is a CZ style pistol made by a company named Tanfoglio in Italy. So I'm going to show you how it is that you take this down. You want to pull on the slide, match up the holes. From there you want to put pressure on this thing. When it's new, it's kind of tight. You're going to need something hard to tap against it. I'm going to attempt to do it manually. If not, I'll use this can right here or something. Let me see. Oh, still pretty new. There we go. That's all I needed. To your retaining pin, pull it out. For some reason on these hammer type guns, I like to leave the slide cocked. Once you've taken that pin out, you're home free to push it forward. Be careful not to send your guide rod flying across the room. It's under spring pressure. Be careful. Up and out. And that's a field strip. From there you do your cleaning and you're good to go. Guys, when you clean firearms, use a solvent that's meant for firearms. I like to use break-free CLP for cleaning and lubrication. Whatever you use for lubrication, make sure it's meant for firearms because it needs to stand up to temperature, and break-free CLP will do it. I like to apply the break-free CLP with Q-tips. That's what I like to use to apply my lubrication in the firearms. Q-tips and break-free CLP, that's how I roll. So without further ado, I'm going to shake the can of break-free CLP and proceed to lubricate the firearm. As a general principle, when you lubricate firearms, you want to put lubrication anywhere that metal rubs metal. Look in your manuals, it'll tell you where you ought to put lubrication. When in doubt, if you don't have a manual or you're just not sure, if you see where, go ahead and put some lubrication on there because obviously there was some metal to metal contact. Go ahead and start out with the slide. I like to pull out on the cotton a little bit so you can get into the cracks and crevices. What I'm using as a backdrop for all this is a huge pile of what at one time were undershirts. When I'm doing something like an AK or a semi-auto rifle of some kind, sometimes I actually use the t-shirts to wipe the carbon out. They work really good for that. When you got like a Alright, so on this particular firearm, I'm doing the channel on the slide where the guide rails that are on the frame move. You need plenty of lubrication there. You want to go in between and on top. They require a lot of lubrication, so I'm going to go ahead and reapply lube and go ahead on the other side. Personally, I like to be liberal with the oil. Go ahead and put plenty. Some guns are very resilient. They'll function even without oil, but that doesn't mean that you're not wearing down your pistol. In order to have a good long life out of your pistol, you got to go ahead and lubricate it, well. The only thing I'm not going to lubricate on this slide is the bolt face. You want to go ahead and leave that dry, but everything else is more than fair game for plenty of lube. The breech face or bolt face, whatever you want to, however you want to slice it, you want to leave it dry. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of oil on the back of the firing pin. It's a bit controversial. Not everybody likes to put a whole bunch of oil there, or any at all, because they don't want it getting seeping in. But I'm going to go ahead and put a tiny bit on there at any rate, because there is a lot of friction between that and the hammer. So I'm going to lube that and the hammer at any rate. I like to lube all of the inside, where your guide rail goes, as well as here where your barrel goes, and all on the inside there requires lubrication. The only thing I would leave dry is the bolt face or breech face, whatever you want to call it. I would leave that dry. Everything else requires some good lubrication. As you can see, there's a lot of wear on the locking lugs. there's wear there, you definitely need to put plenty of oil there. Oddly enough, on this firearm, there's a long channel for the barrel and a long channel for the guide rod. Lube the whole channel. Good lubrication on your firearm is going to extend the life of your firearm, and it's going to ensure that it works reliably, which is very important when you need it. When bullets are flying and people are dying, you want good lubrication inside your firearm. You might just get your just reward for not having a well-maintained firearm when the shit hits the fan. You know, God forbid you have to protect yourself. You want to have firearms that are well-maintained. All over the barrel, all over the outside of the barrel, you want lubrication. All over, just not on the feed ramp, and just not on the feed ramp, and not inside the barrel. Everywhere else, plenty of lube. Done with that. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of lube on the guide rod and spring. You know, don't be stingy at any turn with the lube. I'm going to go ahead and lubricate, not the outside. You don't want to lubricate the outside of your retaining pin. You want to lubricate the parts that go on the inside, because they do rub. I don't know if you can see that wear, but it's there. So we're going to do the parts that go into the firearm. Need lubrication, because they're going to rub with your barrel. And the locking part over here is going to get some lubrication as well. all over, on all sides. Everything that goes inside the firearm needs lubrication. Now we're going to move on to the slide. This is unique, as far as I know, it's unique to CZ style pistols. There's a rail inside, so there's rails. I don't know what to tell you. It's like rails on rails. Gotta do the rails on inside the frame now, just like we did the rails and the channel on the slide. Anything where you see wear, lubricate it. Lubricate that. Lubricate your rails. Lubricate the holes where your retaining pin goes. Lubricate the ejector. And eventually we'll get around to lubricating the hammer. I'm going to dry off the hammer. It's got old lube on it. Let me go ahead and put new lube on it in just a second. These CZ style pistols have a lot of crevices, more than most pistols, believe it or not. So I suggest you pull on the cotton a little bit so you can reach those hard to reach places with your lubrication. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I'm go ahead and reaching deep into the crevices here on the rail. Definitely need plenty of lube on that. That's where all the friction is. I like to do the whole inside of the frame. Also where the guide rod is retained, there's friction, so I like to lube up that pocket as well. I mean, a lot of this stuff might not be getting metal on metal contact or anything, but I just like, be on the safe side. I like to err on the safe side with the lube. Now I'm getting where the guide rail, I'm getting where the guide rod sits. Go ahead and put a little more where the guide rod sits. And then I'm going to move on to the ejector. Lubing up the guide rod. Lubricating. I'm going to lubricate where the hole where the retaining pin goes through. Lubricating. Go ahead and pass through one more time through there. the other hole where the retaining pin locks on. I like to put a little bit in the trigger. On this particular model of firearm anyway, I like to put a little bit in the trigger. And I work the trigger to work the oil in. I hold the hammer while I do so. Let me put the hammer all the way down so I can really reach in there and lube up the trigger. I'll put a tiny drop. I'm not even going to squeeze. Just put a tiny drop on the trigger and work it in. Do not slam the hammer down in this position because you're liable to cause damage. I worked it into the trigger. On CZ style pistols, or at least this one, I like to put some in there. Other pistols, you might not want to do that. That's just my recommendation for this pistol. I'm lubricating the ejector on all sides, top, bottom, left, right, all over. The rest of the trigger mechanism, we give it a little bit of lube. I'm going to go ahead and lube whatever the heck this square is here. Oddly enough, they put a square behind the ejector. Well, they put some metal there, I guess just to close up the back of the gun. And we're done. Now we just have to reassemble. In order to reassemble, just like all your striker fired pistols, drop in your barrel. This is not a striker fired pistol, but it comes back together pretty much the same. Guide rod and spring. Make sure it's resting in the divot that they put in there for the guide rod. So everything should be parallel when you're done. Leave your hammer back. Oh, the only thing I forgot to lubricate is the hammer. So that's it. Now we're done. As soon as I lubricate the hammer, cock your hammer back and lubricate all of the hammer that you have exposed. Back to reassembly with your hammer cocked back. Match up the rails on the gun and the channels on the frame. I'm sorry, match up the rails on the slide with the channels in the frame and pull back. Shouldn't meet any resistance, but if you do, put a little bit more pressure. Don't go too crazy. You don't have to be violent. Once that's back on, I like to put my hand through here and push back to match up the circles. Put your retaining pin in, give it a little wrap, and should be done. Give it a function test, single action, double action. We're good to go. And that's how you take down, lubricate, and reassemble your CZ style pistol. In this case, the Tanfoglio Witness.